I asked a question on Threads: at what point in a 10K does the suffering start? And here are the responses that I got. We had between 4.5 and 5 miles. We had post 6 kilometers, and we had nervous diarrhea before the race is exactly when the suffering begins. All right, so I just ran a 10K this last week, and so I'm gonna let you know where that suffering began for me, because this is a 10K race recap video. And in this video, I'm gonna talk about the 10K strategy. Then I'm gonna talk about running in the heat and the humidity. I'm talk about running shoes, what I wore, the running gear. Also, it's gonna be mostly a talking head video because I can't afford an Insta360 thing that you put on your head to take you with me on the journey. I did take my GoPro down there to shoot some B-roll, but my battery was low. So you're stuck with me just telling you how it went. What a pitch. Hope you're sold. Let's get to it. This is how the 10K went. Actually, this is not a midlife runner video if I don't sit into some of these shots and also define our terms here. What I mean by the heat and humidity is I live in South Central Texas. It's usually high 70s with the 85–90% humidity, which makes the feels like into the mid 80s, and the dew point is usually in the low 70s to mid 70s. So it is hot and a little muggy, a little hard to breathe. It is not the hottest, most worst conditions. I know I'm probably gonna get a lot of people like, well, try living in Florida, try living in Corpus. Yeah, I know, you live closer to the Gulf. There are more oppressive weathers, but that's still, this is some sneaky, nasty weather, okay? This doesn't make it any easier to run in this weather, and certainly not to race in this weather. So that's what I mean by heat and humidity, just so we're on the same page. Okay, so for the race strategy, I've changed my strategy a couple of times throughout the week leading up to this race, which is my first 10K, by the way. So the first original idea that I had, or the approach I was gonna take, was based off a workout I did on the Tuesday leading up into the race on Saturday. And it was a 3-mile progressive tempo. And it was starting at marathon pace, then half marathon pace for the second mile, and then the third mile was supposed to be 10K pace. Now, how I felt at the end of that third mile was typical 3-mile tempo. It was uncomfortable, but it was manageable. And this is gonna be my approach. On race day, I'm gonna ease my way into it, but I need to pick paces because this 10K is gonna be indicative of what I could run a marathon in. And let's see, I wanna run a marathon in a sub 3. So what do I need? 38-minute 10K? Yeah, okay. So what is that pace? 6:07. So I'll start here and I'll start there. And I started to build this race up until I saw a Stephen Scullion video about racing, how he hates racing. And here, I'll just cut to the clip.
I don't hate every race, but I have a bloody awful relationship when it comes to racing. I overcomplicate it. I often get very anxious around races. I tend to make them way more complicated than they're supposed to be. I overthink it. I put too much pressure on myself internally. The problem is when you add in other expectations. I want to run at this pace. I understood that my problem in this entire equation was that the second that I added in anything other than the fact I was gonna go compete on just another Sunday, that's when the problem started. So we'll take a rewind back. It's Monday, you're gonna compete in 6 days' time. And instead of thinking, I'm gonna enter this 10K and I'm gonna go run, and I'm gonna go run a 10K pretty hard. I wanna see how training's been going, and we'll see how it goes. On Sunday, I'm gonna go run 10K pretty hard. 10K pretty hard.
It was a really good video, and I realized, you know what, I can run a 10K pretty hard. That's it, you know, and I don't know the impact of weather. I started getting online, like, how much does hot and humidity affect your pace per mile? Like, what should I slow down to? What should I, and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, you know what, I can just run 10K pretty hard. And then I touched base with my coach, Matt Fox, who said I wouldn't even look at the watch, wouldn't even look at the pace. And so that became my strategy for the race. Okay, race day gear, there's only 2 things of note. If you know me, I'm a budget buyer. Most of all my stuff I get on, you know, Amazon from Half Tide Shorts. But I wore the Mizuno Wave Rebellion Pro 2. I've run a 5K in these, now I've run a 10K in these. This is one of my favorite super shoes of the year. I got it right up there with the Asics Meta Speed Edge Paris and the Alpha Fly 3. I think I could. I'm working up the balls to run a marathon in this thing, or courage. I meant courage. You know what, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna keep it. Anyway, awesome shoe. It performed fantastically. The other thing is there's a subscriber who asked in a video about the earbuds I use. I just use some like Amazon JLab earbuds for like 30 bucks, but I use these for the race. These are the only bone conducting headphones that I actually really enjoy. They're from a company called ALLway. They were sent to me. I will put a link in the description below, and you can use that code to get 10% off. Anyway, they're so lightweight, you don't even notice it. You probably run faster. That's how they make you lighter, because they're so lightweight. Don't quote me on that. Forgive the color, it's orange, for it does not know what it does. But these things are awesome. And they are slightly more expensive than the JLab ones, but I think some things in life are worth the extra dollar, namely toilet paper, but also things that you use every day of your life. Like for me, I run every day. So I've been using these. Anyway, let's get to the race recap. Let's go. All right, now let's talk about how it went with the splits mile by mile. It is the course, it is 10K, it's a loop. It's a 5K loop, so we do the loop 2 times. The race starts, I take off up at the front. Probably a quarter mile in, I get overtaken by a young buck named Christian. He's very fast. He's much faster than me. But he was running about my pace, so that was really good. And I just stayed on his heels and I ran comfortably hard, or not even that hard, comfortably pretty hard. Then my watch beeps at me. I look down at the end of mile 1. It was a 6:12 pace. Okay, now also looking back at the data after the race was done, I looked at the heart rate data then and saw that it was a 161, which, you know, a lie. The first mile is always a lie. If someone said that on Threads, don't believe the first one, because you know the heart rate takes a while to warm up. I was just going by feel and I was running comfortably pretty hard. Okay, mile 2, things started to get a little spicy and they were picking up. We picked up the pace and we got some more company. There's another runner. His name is Matt. He caught up to us and he was in between me and Christian. We were all kind of grouped together, still cruising along. I could tell that the pace picked up. I didn't look at my watch. I didn't know. It just felt like I was getting into actual threshold and then a little bit faster, probably towards more of a 10K pace. Mile 2 ended up being a 6:05. Looking back at the data later, I see that for a lot of that mile, we were in the 540s to 550s. So we did pick up the pace, but it was, okay, 6:05. Still felt pretty good. Looking back, the heart rate for mile 2 was 179. This is my half marathon PB heart rate for that, which, you know, you start a little bit slower, then you go a little bit faster, and you end up with 179. Effort-wise, right in the ballpark of where I should be. Mile 3. More of the same. So we just kind of kept on with that same sort of effort, and you go through the start line again, which is like the finish line, and then loop back. So you got to do a U-turn, and so you get a chip time right at the middle. My chip time was a 19:12. Christian's was a 19:10. So like I was like right behind him following along. Matt was with us too. My heart rate was around 180, so effort levels, everything kind of the same. Still feeling pretty good. You know, it's 3 miles in, it's uncomfortable. It's kind of like the 3-mile tempo, the 2x3s, like not a fan of those. Love my 6x1s with my 1-minute breaks, but still manageable, rocking and rolling. The suffering has not settled in. Oh, also to note, in the 4th mile, Matt fell off. This is where the heat humidity got to him. So he was with us the first half, positive split the second half. Don't know how far back he was or anything. I just know that he kind of dropped out. So it's just me and Christian going into mile 5. Okay, so the answer to the question on Threads, when does the 10K really start to hurt and the suffering settle in? Well, in the heat and humidity, and in this particular race, it was exactly 4.5 miles in, or roughly 7K for all my metric friends. And I know this wasn't just my experience. was also Christian's experience, because this is when I caught him. He was starting to slow. Now, again, there were a lot of people on the road and there's a lot of bends and turns and stuff. So I was trying to pass him because he was slowing down on a turn, and I thought it was because of the turn. It didn't occur to me that he was slowing down because he was affected by the weather. And so I looked down at my watch to see what pace we were running at, and I saw 6:34. And I got triggered because I was like, no. We gotta be doing 6:23s, right? I had this number in my head, which we'll talk about in a second. So I gunned it. I went past him and I just put my foot on the pedal because I had the energy to do so. Now, why was this number a trigger for me? Well, before I watched the Stephen Scullion video, I was going down rabbit holes, Macmillan weather pace calculators, to see how much that weather would impact you per mile. Roughly what I came up with was about 15 seconds a mile slower. So I wanted to run a 38-minute 10K, and that's a 6 or 7 pace. So I was like, equivalent. If I was gonna run a 38-minute equivalent, that is something like a 6:22 or 6:23 pace. And I couldn't remember which one at the time because I was running in the heat, but I saw 6:34 and I was like, no, and I just put my foot on the pedal. As a consequence, that mile, mile 5, ended up being a 6:22, which means that in order to get there from a 6:34 is that I was running much farther in front of it. I went all Grant Fisher a little too soon. So if you look at the data, it'll show that I was hitting like 6-minute pace. I didn't look back. I just kept going, and then we enter the final mile. Okay, the last mile, all kind of a blur, lots of pain, just pushing. Heart rate, probably 184, 185 in that 5K range. I've seen like 197 for a max on a couple of max efforts for the heart rate. So heart rate, this is all in retrospect. I wasn't looking at my heart rate while I was going, but I'm not concerned about the heart rate or anything. Anyway, final mile was a 6:23, and because my last 5K course was a little short, after I crossed the finish line in a 19:04, I continued to run just a little bit more to make sure I got the extra distance, because I didn't want to get Strava taxed. Got to make sure that 10K PB is a 10K PB, not just because it's my first 10K race, but I also have to technically run 10 kilometers for it to be a PB, which it was. And I ended up taking first. The split for the second half was a 19:52. So 19:12, 19:52, I was 40 seconds positive split in this race with those conditions. Now, what does this 10K mean? This is like the purpose of the video. This is the main thing that I really want to talk about, right? Because I went into this spring of speed. Some people are doing summer of speed. Your boy over here started spring of speed, okay? Because I started in April, right? And there wasn't May showers, but I was running through it in May and in June and July. And so thinking like, I'm gonna get better at the 5K, I'm gonna get better at the 10K, and every 5K and every 10K that I do, they're gonna be race equivalent performances that we'll be able to extract from it, and I'll know what I'll be able to run for the marathon. But there's two different things. There's getting faster, and then there's training for a marathon. They're not the same, okay? Sometimes you do get faster when you're training for a marathon because you're building in volume and you're getting progressive overload, and all of that's nice. But right now I'm running 50, 60 miles a week. I'm just getting faster, and I have. My Garmin's telling me, hey, you're at 59. No, you're at 60, you're at 61, you're at 62. I've gotten a lot faster. My easy pace has come down. Like all the other indicators that my fitness is improving are showing. So it doesn't matter if the hot weather masks my fitness and I don't know what I truly am capable of, because it doesn't matter. I can't go out and run a sub 250 right now, even if I was in sub 250 shape, because I haven't trained for the marathon. The marathon training hasn't started. We are months away from that, and then that's what marathon training is for. Some people, they do high mileage all the time. There are many people who do that, and they're ready to go run a marathon at any point in time. And when their Chorus or their Garmin says, hey, you're in sub 240 shape, well, guess what? They'll go run at 240 because they've already been putting in the mileage and the marathon pace work to be able to do that. I have not. So it does, all that matters is that my fitness is improving, and I don't need to do the weather apps and go in there and because that's the first thing I did. I went home, I was like, oh, you know, I started to go down that rabbit hole again. Oh, this McMillan calculator says that that's the equivalent of 36:08. I could run a 2:48 marathon, you know, and that's silly, right? It's very generous. Thank you, McMillan. You know, take my money, you know, if that's what I could do. But that's potential, right? That's just indicative of fitness, because I'm only trying to get fast right now. I'm not trying to train for a marathon. That process is going to be starting. We're going to be onboarding through this month, and then starting a big 10-week block through Sweat Elite Coaching Academy and Matt Fox to get ready for the marathon October 27th. So back to I made a video, my new mantra, which is just run. And that's what I did in this race. But I mean, from a macro level, I'm just running, and it doesn't matter where it lands. And I don't want to do any hypotheticals. I don't want to say I ran 20 miles and I was at this pace, but then this happened. I was 24 miles in and then this happened, and then I didn't. I run what I run, right? I can't say like, yeah, I ran a 39, but it would have been a 36 and a half or 36. No, I ran a 39.04. That's it. Like, that's what I ran. This is just the way it is. And I prefer it this way, because that means there's still some meat on the bone. There's some work left to be done. There is something to go prove to nobody, because no one really cares you're watching, but to prove to myself. I'm gonna go put in that work for the next few months and see what I'm capable of doing on race day. I appreciate you guys watching and following along and learning with me on this journey. I've got to start to do the whole breaking free thing again. Yeah, that's coming up. And of course, shoe reviews, all that, blah, blah, blah. Love you. Bye.
Keep the same energy. Work on being better when I'm 70. Your drip is just a water spring. You know I drip different, this is 7 seas.